The greatest quarterback to ever do it? Maybe not, but Dan Marino is considered the best player to never win a Super Bowl. But why could he never get over the hump despite his undeniable talent? Defense, the run game, tough competition, injuries, and even Marino himself were factors at play during his 17-year career. But if quarterbacks like Trent Dilfer, Jim Plunkett, and Doug Williams could win a ring, why couldn't one of the best quarterbacks do it? Is Dan Marino to blame, or can we find reason elsewhere? Today I'll examine why Dan Marino could never lift a Lombardi. Firstly, throughout Marino's career, the Dolphins' defense was problematic. Here's the yearly rankings. 5 out of his first 10 seasons, Marino had the worst, or close to it, defense in the NFL. By the time the defense was actually any good, he was past his prime and closing in on retirement. And in the playoff losses, Miami gave up an average of 34 points. Some of the key losses included 1983, where the defense gave up a touchdown with 2 minutes to go, lost the lead, Miami fumbled consecutive kickoffs, and Marino never got the ball back. In 1985, the defense gave up 31 in a loss to New England in the AFC title game, and in 1994, Miami couldn't run from its own 1-yard line, giving up a safety. San Diego had the ball the entire fourth quarter, the Miami defense blew the lead with a minute left to go, but Marino still managed to get them in field goal range, however the field goal kicker missed it. Having no defense is hard enough on a quarterback, but when you couple that with a crap run game, you have a recipe for disaster. Here's the yearly rankings. You can see the Dolphins were never ranked top 10 in rushing yards for Marino's whole career. Outside of the first 2 years of his career, the team was never fully complete. Marino also only had one 1,000-yard rusher, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, nope, wrong guy, who had 1,116 yards in 1996. And in the playoffs, the defense allowed over 210 yards a game rushing. So when you have a defense that can't stop the run, and you can't run, it doesn't work out well. Some key failures in the playoffs included San Francisco in the Super Bowl in 1994. San Francisco had 211 rushing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Miami only had 25 rushing yards and no touchdowns. In the AFC Championship, Buffalo had 182 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Miami had 33 and no touchdown. In the divisional game against San Diego had 202 rushing yards and a touchdown. Miami had 26 rushing yards and no touchdowns. The list goes on, but of the 10 playoff losses, even in the handful that the Dolphins had a good shot to win, the running game was non-existent, meaning it was all on Marino's shoulders. There's only been one quarterback in NFL playoff history that's won a game with a 150-yard rushing disparity. That was Dan Marino, who was outrushed 252 yards to 91 yards and still beat the Browns. Then you have the Buffalo Bills, who were apparently the Dolphins' kryptonite in the 80s and 90s. They played each other 5 times in the playoffs throughout Marino's career. Buffalo won 3 and the Dolphins won 2, but the 2 they won were the last 2 years of Marino's career when he was old and well out of his prime. In 1991, they lost 44-34 in the divisional round. In 1993, they lost 29-10 in the AFC Championship, and in 1995, they lost 37-22 in a wildcard round. The Bills had an exceptionally strong run game led by Hall of Famer Thurman Thomas. Across the 5 playoff games against the Dolphins, the Bills totaled 170 carries for 812 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns. Compare this to the Dolphins' 321 yards on 77 carries and only 2 touchdowns. These were the rankings for the years the Bills played them in the playoffs for rushing yards. The Bills' K-gun no-huddle offense, led by quarterback Jim Kelly, was a fast-paced, high-tempo approach that also allowed the Bills to dominate games and bore down the defense. The defense was led by Hall of Famer Bruce Smith, and the Bills' defense was good. However, if you compare the rankings for the years the Bills played the Dolphins in the playoffs, the defense was about even. Miami had a slightly better ranking for 3 out of the 5 years, but it was neck and neck for the most part. Then you have poor drafting and trades. Now, every team has draft busts and trades that don't go to plan. You can't blame the Dolphins for that. It's just part of the game. But the Dolphins didn't seem willing to build the right team around Marino throughout his career. And the best example of this is the refusal to sign Emmitt Smith. And the reason was because it might affect team chemistry if Emmitt Smith didn't accept the offer. That couldn't have been the real reason, but it was just a sign of the Dolphins' incompetence. In 1993, Emmitt Smith had the opportunity to go to another team. He contacted head coach Don Shula saying, look, I want to play for the Dolphins. I want to help Marino win a ring. And he had just come off a 1,000-yard plus rushing season, but Shula wouldn't put an offer on the table for whatever reason. And so Emmitt Smith re-signed with the Cowboys and obviously went on to continue dominating and win more Super Bowls. So this leads us on to Marino's responsibility in all this. Firstly, was he overrated? Definitely not. But the best player on the team, and one of the best to ever do it, has to hold some responsibility. None of that's enough to tarnish his legacy, but let's explore it a bit. 2 of the years he had a good defense, and in 1983 he was a rookie, so you can cut him some slack as to not winning a Super Bowl. No rookie quarterback's ever done that. And then in 1984 he got to his first and only Super Bowl, and he lost to one of the best teams ever in the San Francisco 49ers. His playoff numbers don't look good at first glance. In his 10 playoff losses, 15 touchdowns, 19 interceptions, 52% completion percentage, 63.1 passer rating, but as his Redditor says, it fails to account for the context. He basically had to play elite or lose because none of his team could pick up any slack. It's also cherry picking because that's just his losses, it doesn't account for his wins. But he lost more than he won, and it may be a bit puzzling. But as we saw, the team around him was, for the most part, not up to scratch. After all, football is the ultimate team sport. There is a belief that a superstar quarterback can win titles on their own, but that's not the case. If you look at the teams that won it all during his career, 11 of them were ranked number 1 in overall team rating. The other playoff years years where the number one didn't win were 1983, the Raiders, 1994, the Niners, and 1995, the Cowboys, and each of them were ranked within the top three teams. In conclusion, I think we can place the blame on the Miami Dolphins franchise for not building a better team around Marino. Alright, thanks for watching.